Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Friday. Laurie Mode here, CEO of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. Hi, Stuart. Hi, Dave. Hi, Wayne. I went through the list. I'll be here for a while, but that's great. Great to see so many people online and ready for another week's review and some more content to share with you. So first of all, if I can kick off and say Warami and welcome to everyone and pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and appreciate the lands that they have given us to look after and appreciate their care of it in the past. So again, we've got some newbies. It's so great to see that we're extending our network and really bringing the sector in together with these connect and shares. And so let me start with something that some of you have heard too many times, but apologies, I'm going to have to say it again. But Outdoors New South Wales, ACT, is the peak body for outdoor recreation, education, adventure and bush therapy in New South Wales and ACT. The reason why we exist is to help enrich communities by connecting them with nature and leading them to healthier, more sustainable lives. Something that I have said probably about 17 times in the last 2 days to try to navigate some of the challenges that we're having in the press of late, but more on that a little bit later. So week in review. Wow, where do I start? What a week. First of all, AGM update. And unfortunately, it is with great disappointment that we will be postponing our industry forum. But what that does is actually lead to a potential bigger event, a full day event that we want to hold at Birragai, so that everyone has the opportunity to come and see that facility and engage as a sector. So please watch this space and we'll be coming to you with more information on that event as we start to build what that's going to look like when we're a little bit more out of the clusters that are developing here in New South Wales and Sydney. So the reason for the postponement is really to keep everyone safe. At this point in time, we know the venue's safe, we know the activities are safe, but there are clusters developing in Sydney and people that are quite close to those clusters wanting to attend, and we just feel that it's the best decision at this time, as disappointing as it is. But that enables everyone to join us for our AGM. So what we'll be doing is doing a Zoom event with our AGM, which opens it up to a lot more people, and hopefully you can attend. So that's next Tuesday, the 18th of August at 4:30. So if you got the email last night from us via our membership e-news, you'll see the link there to RSVP and we will get those details to you. Yeah, we look forward to seeing everyone there. The second thing on the agenda, which some of you have probably seen, if you haven't, you must be hiding under a rock as far as social media is concerned, because I'm so pleased with the traction that it's getting, but it's a shame that we had to do this. And it was in response to an article or few articles in reference to a cluster that was developing here in Sydney and reference to a retreat. Unfortunately, an off the cuff comment by our Premier led to some misinterpretation and also some, let's just say, broad brush thinking when it comes to camps and retreats, and we needed to act. So we produced an open letter with our partners at ACA, Australian Camps Association, and Christian Venues. Please read it, please share it, please distribute it amongst anyone you know. Literally, this is really important to get this information. It's a collation of what we stand for as a sector. It's a collation of what the policymakers need to understand about what we deliver. And the further we get this into their hands, the more effective we will be with this communication. At this point in time, we've hired a PR agency to follow it up with some key deliverables into mainstream media. So hopefully we'll start getting some traction in the public realm very, very soon. So please have a look at it. It's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn, it'll be on our website hopefully today. If you can just please share it amongst your networks and get it far and wide. The third thing there, I thought I'd give you a bit of an update from JobKeeper, and I attended a webinar this week which sort of talked a little bit about what we briefly spoke about a couple of weeks ago. I've got a slide there for you which I will share with you in a second. But tips of the week, look, start planning for your transition is my message after I show you what the changes are. But if you haven't started planning for that transition, now's the time to do so. Think about also, in light of today's topic, which is around how do we capitalise on the tourism sector. And I'm going to take you through a little bit about my backstory and history in tourism, and give you a bit of a taster in general about what tourism is and what the opportunities are. And then Nicole O'Donnell, who's from Business New South Wales and the tourism division of Business New South Wales, will give you a bit of an insight into how they're supporting our sector in amongst that division. Second tip of the week, think about what we can offer the travelling public. They are out there now, and as much as some of them are not travelling with these new clusters, they're going to start coming back very soon, and domestic tourism is certainly rife, and I'll give you some data on that in a little. Next week is about sports data. So if you love data nerds out there, join us next week. We're going to take you through the Sport Oz data and how to mine it, how to find the information that you need that you can apply to your sector, your business, your activity. And then I'll give you a bit of an overview of what I would have done at the industry forum. So I'm going to do that on our Friday forum next week. So join us for that one. So without further ado, the JobKeeper, just quickly, as we know, JobKeeper 1 was for employees and appropriate casuals from the 1st of March. So if they were employed on the 1st of March, they were eligible for JobKeeper through this scheme. 2.1 starts on the 28th of September and goes through to the 3rd of January. And then there's the second round, which is 3rd of January, 28th of March. It is not an automatic transfer. So if you see that you're going to be eligible for this, your employees need to re-enroll for it. You need to do the re-enrollment for them as well. You need to pass an eligibility test, which is a GST performance. Now, it was a little bit, let's just say the questions I asked weren't completely answered, and it wasn't really clear on the 30% decline, whether it was quarter to quarter or pre-COVID to that quarter. So we're just getting defined on that, and maybe Nicole might have some insight into that, but it wasn't really clear, and I know there's a lot of questions that's still being asked that the government hasn't responded to as yet, so more details will be forthcoming. But the payment is less, so it's $1,207.50 in the first, and then $1,006.50 in the second, and it's the 20-hour test is the new introduction for that lower amount. And one to remember with 2.1, your staff are eligible if they started 1 July. If you employed people after 1 July, or sorry, before 1 July, they are now eligible for 2.1. As I say, more clarity, but there's a little bit of an insight, and certainly talk to your accountants about how your organisation sits with that. So let me give you a bit of insight into tourism, and I know some of you are already playing in this space, which is great. Forgive me, I'm going to go into some of the basics, but maybe it's just a bit of a mind jogger for you on what tourism is. But first and foremost, we'll go through some of the data and what it actually is. We'll talk about the opportunity that it presents to all businesses, and then what you need to know to really start moving in a direction to capitalise on this market. So if we had a lot of time, I'd sort of ask people what they thought tourism was. And I think generically a lot of people have a misconception about tourism and what it actually stands for or what it actually is. And what I thought I'd do is actually give you a bit of an insight into the depth of what a tourism industry can look like. And that goes with international and domestic. Obviously, at the moment, we don't have international tourists, but let's look BC, before COVID, and let's look at the travelling public and what they make up. So you can have international or domestic people. They can travel singly, so as one single person. They can travel as couples, they can travel as families, and they can travel as groups. And then there's literally 3 distinctive areas that they can fall into, and that is a leisure traveller, which could be everything. FIT, for those that don't know tourism speak, is free independent traveller. We have a lot of acronyms, as every industry does, and they are people that are just touring around, independent of any requirements of a tour, for example, or a group. Special interest, there might be something that triggers their interest to go to that place or that journey. Some of the emerging special interests would blow your mind. There's something called dark tourism, which people are visiting cemeteries and looking at family history and genealogy. There's geocaching, which is a huge craze worldwide. So there's definite special interest groups that define part of leisure. VFR. I think some of you might already know this expression, but visiting friends and relatives is a huge market as our immigration increases in Australia. And you'll notice in particular area city locations, people will come and visit their friends and relatives and spend a considerable amount of time in that city. Or, you know, there's people that also come from country areas and vice versa. And there's events. Events is a huge market for the leisure tourism industry, particularly in regional areas where towns literally thrive off event-generated activity. The business component, it could be competitions where people are paid to be part of a competition, professional or other. Business events, conferences, meetings. There's a thing called incentives, which if you've been in this space, a lot of companies overseas would incentivize employees with trips to Australia. And that was a great market for us. Still was before COVID, but in the 90s and 2000s, that was certainly ramping up at that time. Education, which we only know too well in this sector, but there's study tours, courses, exchange opportunities. It's quite far and wide. And it might not look like your average assumption of each of those areas. So I've just given you a bit of a picture of one destination, and I picked a destination close to my home, which is the Hawkesbury region. And all of these pictures are from the Hawkesbury. So it gives you a bit of an insight into how many types of people and tourists are coming to those areas for those different things. So the top one, a spa retreat, a day trip or an overnight trip. It's the history, the heritage that inspires couples to visit that area. The families go fruit picking and spend weekends on the river. Groups travel on motorbikes throughout the area. The business events, there's rodeos, there's the Hawkesbury show, there's a lot of conferences and things out there. But you've got to remember that when you have something like the Hawkesbury show, it's the businesses that actually supply the products that are coming into an area outside of their normal routine, which they are contributing tourism dollars to that area. The Bridge to Bridge is a big event for the Hawkesbury, and that certainly brings a huge economic value to the area. Education tours, it's known for its farm gate trails in the Hawkesbury, and there's a lot of people that come out to study the practices of those farms, and we have universities out there as well. So a lot of them participate in polo because it's quite well known for polo out there, and it holds the Australian Championships and I think an international event last year or the year before. And then you have your catch a crab tours and things like that on the Hawkesbury River, which inbound tourists and study groups also attend. And then you've got outdoor rec. So you've got a whole gamut of different opportunities in one location, very different people, very different needs, very different spend. So we'll go into a little bit more of that, but I hope that gives you an understanding of the depth and breadth of what tourism actually is. So let's just look at the population. New South Wales has 7.5 million people living here. ACT has close to 400,000. If you compare that to the visitors that come, BC, before COVID, we're talking about 15 times the population visiting in New South Wales. So if you put that in context, you're walking down the street and you see 15 people, chances are one of those would be a local. The other 14 would be a visitor. ACT, 15.5 times the population. So it gives you a bit of an understanding of really how prominent tourism can be in a regional or local town. The left graph is New South Wales and the right graph is ACT. Now you can see here that domestic overnight visitors make up 33% in New South Wales, but ACT relies heavily on our overnight visitors at 52%. Now I'll explain what that means when we get to the dollars. But I think there's a general perception out there that a lot of the visitors, the 114 million, there's a lot of internationals. You can see here, it's very minor. So we're talking 3% of all visitors to New South Wales are from international areas before COVID, and 4% to Canberra. Still a substantial amount of people, but in context, we solely and wholly rely on our domestic day trippers as our major majority of visitors into New South Wales. And there's still a high proportion, obviously, in ACT. Feel free to ask questions as we go through. Sorry, I haven't been checking. Sorry, David. Yes, absolutely. Education tourism is exactly what we're in. So the tourism worth. New South Wales, nearly $41 billion is our economic worth in this sector. ACT, $2.4 billion. When you compare it to just our component of it, because we are considered part of the tourism sector, but if you just look at outdoor sector, we're 7.7 billion. So there is so much more economic worth holistically for the sector than what we have in the outdoor, but we contribute quite highly to that. Now, let's have a look at the spend. So in New South Wales, if you have an international visitor that comes into New South Wales, they're spending, on average, $112 per person per night. Equate that to a domestic tourist, and it's close to double. So $193 per person per night. Our day visitor is less than an international visitor that's spending a night here. So it gives you an understanding of the rates that they're getting for accommodation when they're coming into the country, but also the importance of really harnessing our domestic overnight visitation. In the ACT, it's quite interesting. Our international spend is further down. So it's $96, but the domestic overnight is higher. So it's $212.92 for a domestic overnight in Canberra. And domestic day spend is even higher than New South Wales at close to $150. So you can see by transforming a domestic day to a domestic overnight, the potential of that money going into that town is significantly increased. Destination New South Wales have so much data available, and something that I'm still wishing that we can set up for the outdoor sector, and hopefully next week will give us a start with Sport Oz. But having some sort of pulse and radar on this sector is an aim of mine as we try to navigate the future of the sector. And the tourism industry does it quite well. Destination New South Wales have a whole heap of stats that is supplied through the ABS and what they call the National Visitor Survey. So this is done quarterly, and there's some reports in there that can hone in on certain areas of the markets as well. So I've only shown you one here, which I pulled out from the family market, but there is all different reports on different market segments that can give you an understanding or a pulse on what potential they have for domestic visitation. I pulled this one out because this is who's traveling now. The family markets are the ones that are taking those short breaks on weekends more than ever before, and they're trying to explore their own backyard, primarily because they can't go anywhere else. The borders are closed, they can't get into other states, and the amount of phone calls I've had from my friends going, you know where to go, can you tell me where to go this weekend, is insane. So the family market is certainly one that you need to look at, and you can see here that it's quite a high proportion in length of stay, even before what we're talking about, we're experiencing now. But really what I wanted to highlight to you is this part where outdoor nature activities, active outdoor, continues to be something that people want to do, aspire to do, are interested in doing as they choose where they're going to go. And if you're interested in understanding a little bit more about this, I'm happy to take your calls and show you the links to these papers. But there is one particular paper that I will, if you're interested in this market, in domestic tourism, I'm going to point you to Domesticate. Domesticate is a research project that's happened annually, and I was lucky enough to be around in the early days when it started. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was lucky enough to go along to some of the focus groups that they had with this research project, and witness what they were doing. And for the first time, they actually started to interview kids, obviously with parents' consent, about what inspired them as far as holidays, what did they want to experience themselves, because they were trying to work out what made the family tick when it came to holidays or domestic travel. And I remember sitting there looking at this little kid who was probably 9 or 10 or 11 or something around that age group. And they said, oh, describe your best holiday. And he said, oh, Port Stephens. It was really, really good. And this kid was questioned on, well, why was it so good? Tell us the experience that you had. And he said, it rained the whole week. And here I'm thinking, wow, okay, that's great. But where he was going with that, when they questioned him more, he said, I got to play board games with my mum and my dad all week. And that really hit home to me, that it was the experience that we seek, or we think we're seeking. We've got to draw it back down to the essentials, and it's about connecting and spending more time. And I think that's a really interesting story on what we're seeing now with COVID, and the connection that families are having or have had during this lockdown has made them stronger entities. And now you're seeing this movement of family travel on weekends together as units. So it's really important to have a look at this study, because I think it really does articulate how to communicate your offer, and how to put forward what the experience is that they are seeking. And as you can see here, this is a quote from that report. You know, holidays are not a luxury but a necessity. They use the term escape, and it's to alleviate those stress levels away from city areas. Then it goes in to say that improving your knowledge of history and Indigenous areas is one that they've said they want to do. But while regional destinations shouldn't try to compete with metropolitan stuff, you've got to show your authenticity. You've got to show why you're a place to visit, and tell them the real stories of what they're going to experience. One thing to remember, and I love this quote, there is no such thing as a typical regional holiday. Visitors are driven mainly by what they can do there. So here's a tip. Tell them what they can do there. Articulate the experience they can have. And that's really the power of marketing in this space. There's 3 guiding principles, which I've stolen from their report, which I love. Stop talking about regional travel. Okay, people don't see it as regional travel. They see it as a destination. Where am I going this weekend? I'm going to Mudgee. Where am I going? South Coast. Where am I going? North Coast. They're putting it into a destination context. Be wary of your language. It's not about the destination per se, but what are they looking for in the experience? Are they going to have an experience that's all encompassing of nature, outdoors, food and wine? What is that experience? Articulate that well. And that brand that is built for that region is made up of all those different elements. So you've got to find your part of that element and articulate that. This is another thing from the Domesticate, and I think it just again highlights the importance of our sector in this. It's not the destination, but the experiences people want to have. And this is from the survey. People have said they want adventure, they want bush outback, they want hills, mountains, they want snow, they want rivers and lakes. We're ticking these boxes. How do we articulate the experience, and how do we offer that experience to these people is the next challenge. So here's a fact. At any point in time, 250,000 Sydney people are normally overseas. Not now, okay? So we've got 250,000 people that normally travel for whatever reason, business, pleasure or other, that are here, and we can capture them. They're ready to travel, so let's make the most of that. This is a really, really old slide that I've dug out of the depths of my archives, but I think it really articulates tourism and the power of tourism really well. We know that the money comes from travellers, and they use travel transport to get to their destination, and that's primarily where their first dollar goes. But then it goes into all the other elements that sit with tourism, whether it be our recreation or our lodging, our campgrounds, etc. The money is going into that layer. But here's where the power of tourism is. The money is coming from outside, and as it arrives to a destination, it's then filtered through that community via way of wages, and it supports the schools and the shopping centres and business to business services. The tourism dollar is said to replicate up to 8 to 10 times within a community. And the power of that economics is so, so good. So as I say, very old slide, but I think it really articulates the power of the tourism dollar. What you need to know, oh my Lord, online matters. Just as a quick tip, you think about your own journeys and you think about what you want to do. What's the first thing you do? You Google it, or you jump on your phone. What's actually there? What can I do? It is not only not important, it is essential now. So let's have a look at your online presence. And if you haven't already done this, please do this. If you've got a Google account, great. If you haven't set one up, Google Alerts is a powerful, powerful tool. Go into Google Alerts and type in the words that are things you want to search on a regular basis in Google. So it could be, I've got alerts set up for my name because I want to know what people are saying about me. I've got Google Alerts that is Outdoors New South Wales and ACT, so I know what people are saying about the organisation. I've got Google Alerts for outdoor recreation, outdoor education. I've got Google Alerts for my local member. So trying to work out really what I want to search on a regular basis and feel the pulse of what's happening online with those search terms. I don't have to do it every day. I put it into Google Alerts and it sends me an email when there's something that I need to know. So if you haven't done it, do it, please. If you can get on, you'll get a pulse for what they're saying about your business. You can even put your competitors in there if you like. Your location, destination is important because if you can feel what's being said about your destination, you can react and you can certainly cater to what's being said or interject your product into that website or that comment. Know what your audience is saying as well. So get a feel for who you think your ideal audience is and set up Google Alerts on some of the networks that they are doing. So there's tip number one for you. As we go through the online stuff, there's some really important elements. Google Maps is becoming more and more important as people are reliant on their handheld devices. And also the satellite navigation systems that you find in cars these days, which pick up from tools like this. So making sure that you're pinpointed on Google Maps as a business, if you're open to the public at that source, is certainly really, really key. I've used the Hawkesbury again for these examples, but it gives you an idea of some of the things that are out there. If you type in your destination, what comes up? What's the main features that come up? And that is what your tourists are seeing. So that's where you've got to be. Some of them are free listings. Some of them are paid. Be very careful about your paid listings because as you heard a couple of weeks ago from the guys at Get Connected, that is a great free tool that can disperse your information into so many different websites. So TripAdvisor is a great one because it's a peer-to-peer review and people tend to take faith on a lot of what's said on that platform. And having your information on there will help the public find you. Facebook, another one. There's a lot of groups out there. There's a lot of different pages that exist. What can people find if they're searching for things to do this weekend? Have a look at the events and what's actually going on. Not obviously a lot of events at the moment, but as they start to come back, that is also a key. Day trips, Sydney. That is one of the highest search terms right now. So what's coming up and how can we interject into that? Where can we put our product that's best going to suit that day trip market? And as you saw, that's the largest percentage in New South Wales of visitors. This is part of ATDW. So as we said with the Get Connected team, plugging yourself in, because if you click on Go Kayaking in the Hawkesbury River, you want to make sure that your product comes up there. Okay, so by putting your contact in to get connected, this will pull that content from there and put it onto Sydney.com and visit NewSouthWales.com and Australia.com and all the other ones that ATDW are connected with. Here's a great example of how to put your business forward. The top one's from NRMA, the bottom one's from Best Trips, which is a website, but the way you articulate your content, going back to what we were saying in Domesticate research, articulating what your offer is, but how does it fit within your destination? What does the itinerary look like? And the more you can articulate that itinerary, the more you're going to cut through to that target market and say, that's something we want to do. So here's your hints and tips. Use us. Obviously, send us any content that you have that you want to try to get to a market like a domestic tourist, because we can then expend it through our social media, our websites, our contacts, and help you get it out into the marketplace. Use Get Connected. Use the systems that support those two websites in getting information to the public. They've also got industry development sessions, which are often free. So keeping an eye out on them can give you some more depth to what I'm telling you today. Connect with your tourism department in your local council. They often run the visitor information centres, so making sure they know about your product. Offer them a famil, offer them a chance to come out and see your product so that they know what you offer. So when they get presented opportunities, that they think of you. Destination New South Wales and Visit Canberra often organise media familiarisations, and that means that they come out and write about your product and experience it themselves, which puts it into mainstream media. So by connecting with your Visitor Information Centre, they can refer you to some of those opportunities, as well as Destination New South Wales and Visit Canberra. But the key component to anything to do with tourism is about collaboration and packaging. And don't get me wrong, when I say packaging, I don't mean a $6.99 deal for 7 nights accommodation or meals paid. I'm talking a package that is an itinerary, a package that is a communication of what people can experience and be offered while they're in your destination. And that is really where the power is. What is your online reputation? Your Google Alerts will help you with that. Understand what people are saying about you. Look at the peer review sites. You may not have even been on some of these peer review sites, but I can bet you bottom dollar there would have been someone that put something up about you if you've got a tourism market. So make sure you really jump into all of those different sites and get a pulse for what people are saying. And if it's wrong, correct it. If it's right, great, promote it. So use it to your advantage. And this is something I do a lot with businesses, is how to manage that process as well. So if you're struggling in trying to managing that, give me a call. We can talk it through. I think I've said enough. You're sick of hearing me, aren't you? Okay, so what I thought I'd do is hand over to Nicole O'Donnell, who, Nicole is amazing. She's a great support for our sector and for the tourism sector. She is in the tourism division at the New South Wales Business Chamber, which is now known as Business New South Wales. So Nicole, I'm going to hand over to you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Laurie, and hello everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Just bear with me. Okay, well, good morning. As Laurie introduced me, my name's Nicole O'Donnell, and I represent the Tourism Division of Business New South Wales. At the moment, when I say division, that's me. But we are currently recruiting for a leadership role within the division. So we'll be going from strength to strength to help support the industry further as we recover. So just a little bit about Business New South Wales. As Laurie mentioned, we're formerly New South Wales Business Chamber. We're the peak policy and advocacy body for New South Wales, and we've actually been representing business for around 194 years. So started out back in 1826, and as we've grown, we've brought along 20,000 members. We have 5,000 that are direct members, and also a further 15,000 come through our associated membership with local chambers of commerce, which many of you may be involved with in your region. So we also have quite an extensive commercial division as well, and as part of our rebrand, what we did with that was our advocacy side remained with Business New South Wales, and our commercial activities, which include things like recruitment. We have a substantial law firm as part of our organisation. We support apprenticeships that formed in under the banner of Business Australia. So that's really where we work with businesses one-on-one, whereas our policy and advocacy arm with Business New South Wales, we're supporting really as many businesses as possible throughout New South Wales. So the tourism division supports the New South Wales Tourism Industry Council. Now the council amalgamated into Business New South Wales back in 2014, and today the tourism division, which supports the council, sits within our policy and public affairs division. We bring together under the council a group of voluntary industry councillors, which of course includes Laurie, representing your sector for Outdoors New South Wales and the ACT. And the councillors represent broadly the industry in New South Wales and specific regions. We also interact with the other state tourism industry councils, and they're very active, all working independently of government and representing over 8,000 tourism businesses across the country. So the role of the New South Wales Tourism Industry Council is really to advise Business New South Wales on specific industry policy and issues related to the tourism sector. And then in turn, we advocate with government at all levels to create a better operating environment for tourism businesses, which incorporates, of course, the outdoors and adventure sectors. Our council is led by Simon Spellacy, he's our chair, and our vice chair is Lyndall Gray, who many of you may know as the CEO of Caravan and Camping Industry Association, and she's also formerly from Tourism New South Wales, and we're supported, like I said, from various leaders in the industry. So just to let you know, very much so, the issues facing your sector are very much front of mind. I mentioned to Laurie earlier, this morning, just prior to 9, I was speaking with my manager, Ben Riley, who's our General Manager of Advocacy and Engagement, and without prompting, he referred to the Premier's comments this week, and so that's very much front of mind. And there is actually a meeting with our organisation and the Premier on Monday. So, depending on how time goes, that will certainly be raised. But in terms of our position, we are very much about keeping as many businesses open as possible. Just recently, as many of you would know, we've had similar issues down on the border region, and our regional manager down in that area, he's been very vocal in helping to support businesses down there. And where we've had success is identifying low risk activities that have high impact to the economy. For example, down in the border region, we've been able to identify some additional professions that could be incorporated as essential workers, and some other towns that can be incorporated and supported there. But obviously, as we know, government is managing health and the economy, and at the moment, especially with the clusters throughout New South Wales and the situation in Victoria, health really has to be the priority. But where we found we've also had success is where we can identify case studies. For example, if we can show to government a case study of a business which is low risk and high impact to a community, and the associated contribution that having that business open can show to the flow onto the community. That's where we have been able to get some success. Other things we can potentially do is if there's businesses or camps operating on government land, you know, we can assist to potentially have the rent put on hold at this time, just to sort of do whatever we can to ensure that, you know, businesses can keep operating. So perhaps later, if there's time at the end, or Laurie may follow up with you, but it would be good for us to understand, you know, what else we can be doing in terms of things that are going to help you through this time. So our council, we meet bi-monthly, and that's where, you know, each representative raises specific issues in their sector. We generally have a regional Western Sydney focus. In terms of our footprint across the state, I sit in a team comprising our regional managers throughout the state. So Northern Rivers, Mid-North Coast, Riverina Murray, Western New South Wales, the New England area, and the South Coast is all represented. So we get together at the moment twice a week. So that's where, you know, we're hearing issues across the different regions, and we can see patterns, and then look at what we then progress to the next level to help support businesses. We also have a very strong network with local chambers across the state through our Chamber Alliance program. There's 200 local business chambers that participate there. So our regional management team is very much